The first sentence of the Bible hangs in a vacuum older than time. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. 10 words. Behind them, darkness, pre-dawn silence, a wind that has not yet learned the shape of light. Ahead of them, microwave afterglow, red-shifted galaxies, fossil genes, quantum foam. Somewhere between the two, we discover we are still holding our breath. The problem is not that Genesis and the cosmos contradict. The problem is that both speak first, and only afterwards do we realize we do not share a common grammar. One text is pressed into clay, scroll, codex, memory. The other is written in spectral lines and half-lives that refuse to hurry. Both claim to narrate the same morning. Both leave us with the same vertigo, a beginning we cannot reach, an origin that already knows our name. So the question calcifies into opposition: 6 days or 13.8 billion years, dust or supernova ash, command or chaos. The camps dig in, exchanging sound bites like artillery. Yet beneath the noise, something more unnerving waits, an echo that sounds to some ears like harmony. Not a truce, not a synthesis, but a single melody played on 2 instruments whose tunings ought to be incompatible, yet somehow produce a tension that feels like beauty. That possibility is what this film refuses to protect you from. Why does it matter? Because every Sunday school flannel graph and every planetarium show trains the imagination before the intellect can vote. Because a teenager who hears either or will quietly conclude, therefore neither, and walk away from both altar and telescope. Because the public square has learned to weaponize the fracture. Creationists become caricatures, cosmologists become priests of negation, and the middle ground, wherever it is, turns to scorched earth. The cost is not measured in academic citations. It is measured in night skies no one bothers to look at, in scripture pages no one dares to read aloud. When the book and the cosmos stop talking, the silence migrates into human hearts and stays there. We begin, then, with the text itself, Genesis 1:1-2-3, the 7-day liturgy. No photograph, no equation, just Hebrew consonants arranged in a cadence older than vowels. The first verb, bara, is reserved for divine subjects. Humans never bara. The grammar quietly insists that whatever happens here lies outside human craft or combat. Next comes tvbhv, formlessness and emptiness, terms that evoke a storm-racked wasteland, not a vacuum. The spirit hovers, misdirached, a word used elsewhere for a bird trembling over fledglings. Already the text refuses to be a laboratory report. It is a choreography of presence brooding over absence. Even the word day, YVM, carries a prefix that can mean age, epoch, or visible daylight, depending on which lexicon you trust and which anxiety you bring to the table. The text knows its own ambiguities and declines to resolve them. Any interpreter who rushes in to stabilize the meaning merely advertises his fear. Still, the sequence is stubborn. Light before sun, earth before stars, birds before land animals. Humans last. Cosmology gives a different order. Stars first, then earth, then sea life, land life, winged creatures, and finally humans. Though even science quibbles internally about the timing of wings. The tension is not decorative, it is structural. Yet structure can be genre. A century of Assyriology has shown that Genesis 1 shares architectural beats with Enuma Elish, divine word, partitioning of waters, appointment of luminaries, rest. The difference is that Genesis evacuates the gods, leaving one speaker and a cosmos that is not divine but spoken. The text may be doing theology, not chronology, demolishing Babylonian cosmology while borrowing its scaffolding. If so, the 6-day framework is a literary truss, not a stopwatch. The earth-shattering claim is monoculture of deity, not duration of manufacture. Once that possibility is admitted, the calendar caught in the margin catches fire and floats away. Enter Augustine, 4th century, North Africa. Before telescopes, before Bibles in vernacular tongues, he warns that the days of Genesis are beyond the experience of those who measure by the revolution of the sun. He suggests instantaneous creation whose narrative is unfolded for finite minds, not because science forced him, there was none, but because the text itself strained against literal time. Centuries later, Galileo will quote Augustine to cardinals who quote Genesis to condemn Galileo. Irony coils back on itself like a Mobius strip. The church father invoked to defend fixity turns out to have been a theorist of non-literal days. Tradition is never as monolithic as the fearful want it to be. Fast forward to 1927, Georges Lemaitre, Belgian priest and physicist, solves Einstein's equations forward instead of backward and watches the universe swell from a primeval atom. The term Big Bang will be hurled as an insult by Fred Hoyle, atheist defender of an eternal cosmos. Lemaitre, unshaken, tells the Pope that the physics is provisional and ought never be baptized as dogma. He understands what both fundamentalists and anti-theists refuse. Theories expand and contract. The liturgy does not need their protection, only their honesty. Meanwhile, Edwin Hubble's telescope confirms redshift, and the galaxies recede like memories that refuse to stand still for the portrait. The universe has a beginning after all. The Church, which once burned to defend a beginning, now hesitates. Will the fire of cosmology warm the faith or consume it? Let us measure the silence. The cosmic microwave background radiates at 2.725 Kelvin, a whisper so faint it took a radio antenna cooled to near absolute zero to hear it. That hiss is the oldest light, freed 380,000 years after whatever ignition we still cannot name. If you tune an old television between channels, 1% of the static on the screen is that photon relic. Every time you watch snow, you witness the echo of first light, Genesis 1:3, before there was any eye to see. The text says, "Let light be," and 13 billion years later, the light still refuses to stop arriving. No equation compels the syllables to coincide, yet the concurrence will not leave the mind alone. Consider the ordering of life. Genesis has vegetation on day 3, sea creatures and birds on day 5, land animals and humans on day 6. Paleontology says photosynthetic bacteria by 3.5 billion years, multicellular ocean life by 600 million, tetrapods onto land by 365 million, wings later, humans last. Overlap is partial, but the pattern, ocean before land, plants before animals, simplicity before complexity, survives both narratives. Even the Hebrew verb for create shifts. Plants sprout, sea life teem, birds fly, land life produce. Humans create in the image of God. The text tracks increasing autonomy, increasing capacity to bear the divine image. Evolutionary biology tells the same crescendo: prokaryote, eukaryote, vertebrate, social mammal, symbolic human. Neither account is comfortable with the other's vocabulary, yet both plot a curve from bare matter to mind capable of wondering why anything begins. We are not allowed to collapse the curves into one another. The day-age theory tries. Each day equals geological epoch. Strength preserves sequence, respects antiquity. Weakness imposes external calendar onto ancient poem, creates tortured matchups, pollinating insects before pollinating plants, birds before land reptiles. The framework hypothesis offers a different key. Days 1 to 3 form habitats, light, dark, sea, sky, land. Days 4 to 6 fill them, luminaries, fish, birds, land animals, humans. Strength recognizes literary symmetry, removes chronology as prerequisite. Weakness feels abstract to congregations raised on flannel graphs, risks turning Genesis into cipher. The literal 24-hour view, strength, honors the plain sense of evening and morning, preserves historical grammar. Weakness, collides with every dating method known to physics, chemistry, geology, and genetics, forces elaborate flood geology scaffolding that collapses under minimal scrutiny. Each option extracts a price. None comes without bruises. The text sits in the dock and watches us plead for it, unimpressed. Listen instead to the silence inside the words. Genesis never says how, it says who, and then only by refusing name. Elohim, plural intensity, singular verb, grammar itself staging mystery. Science, when honest, also begins in wonder. The fine structure constant, 137, dark energy density, 10-120, the proton to electron mass ratio holding steady across 10 billion light years. Tweak any constant by a percent, and carbon burns wrong. Galaxies never coagulate. Chemistry fails. Some call it design. Others call it selection bias. Only the hospitable numbers leave observers behind to notice. Both answers arrive at the same cliff. Why is there a cosmos fine enough to fine-tune, or minds fine enough to argue about it? The question is older than either Genesis or the Standard Model. It only dresses in new equations. Take the rib, the dust, the breath. Genesis 2:7. God forms Ha-Adam from Ha-Adamah. Wordplay untranslatable. Earthling from earth. The pun is the theology. We are the same stuff, only animated. Science confirms the jest. Every element heavier than helium was forged in stars that exploded before the sun ignited. Your calcium, your carbon, your iron, all once stellar ash. The text says dust. The periodic table says stardust. Convergence, perhaps. But Genesis adds one detail science cannot test. A breath, nishmat chayim, breath of life. Not oxygen exchange, plants do that, but something that turns chemistry into biography. The breath is not measured in milliliters, it is measured in guilt, music, unrequited love. Science can track the neural correlates, it cannot locate the wound. Genesis will not hand over the breath for dissection, and science, to its credit, does not pretend to possess it. The boundary is absolute. The boundary is porous. Peak moment arrives not with trumpet, but with subtraction. Picture the James Webb Space Telescope folded inside an Ariane rocket, origami mirror waiting to unfold. It launches on Christmas morning 2021, a date no planner chose for symbolism, yet impossible to ignore. 6 months later, it parks at Lagrange Point 2, a million miles from midnight. Its first image, a galaxy cluster 4.6 billion light-years away, gravitational lens bending space-time into an Einstein ring. Behind the ring, newborn galaxies reddened at Zeta 13, meaning their light left when the universe was 330 million years old. Infant cosmos photographed in infrared. The image is silent, but it speaks. Every photon traveled longer than Earth has existed. The planet that hosts Bibles, mosques, gulags, and lullabies is younger than the journey of a single ray now landing on gold-plated beryllium. Scale collapses humility into terror. Genesis says God saw light before sun. Webb sees light before Earth. No one expected the alignment, yet there it is. Ancient poem and space-born mirror staring at the same dawn, neither blinking. We understand more photons, more redshift, more dark energy, and yet less than we thought because the image ends at the edge of opacity. The cosmic dark ages still veiled. Knowledge expands. Comprehension shrinks. The narrator inside the skull realizes he is holding two books whose final pages are both missing, and the remainder is not a problem to solve but a tension to inhabit. So we stop trying to solve it. We summarize what we know. The universe began. The Bible begins. Both refuse to finish the sentence. We clarify what remains unresolved. The grammar of day, the ontology of the breath, the why behind the constants. We reinforce humility. Texts older than carbon dating. Cosmos older than grammar. No harmony is forced. Space is left, not answers. The camera lingers on the snow of an untuned television, on the black of a web mosaic, on the white of a scroll fragment that reads, "In the beginning." 3 frames, no dissolve between them. The audience is escorted to the threshold and abandoned there, ears ringing with echo. Final question, unresolved, delivered quietly. If the cosmos is a verse that never ends, and Genesis is a verse that never begins, what makes us so certain we are reading in the right direction?